Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby. I'm playing the Object 140. This is a tier 10 Russian medium tank, and it's probably one of my favorite tier 10 medium tanks in the game. And in my opinion, and start controversy in the comments below, I believe it's the best tier 10 Soviet medium tank. Alright, so I'm playing on Malinovka. I'm in the very lovely position of being the only tier 10 tank in the game, and I decide to go all in to try and have a magical experience. So, as you can see, I'm rushing across. I notice that I don't get spotted until now, and I dive out at the last possible moment. I'd like to highlight just that quickly. You can make your way along this ridgeline fairly easily, and then once you've got spotted, it's quite easy for you to duck down. And when you go down the bottom of the slope, you're only going to lose your track, so unless there are people who are rushing here, you should be okay and not take any damage. Now this position is quite strong in the current iteration of the patch, because what you can do is get down here and get fire support from your team. I'd like to just highlight that in 9.0 there will be a ridgeline up here, which will mean that you won't get fire support to here. So if the enemies do come on this ridgeline, you're going to have to hope that your people up on the hill give you fire support. And that in 9.0, with the map adjustments, and I suggest you check out my 9.0 map changes video if you want to find them out, keep in mind that this position will be nerfed heavily. But for now, this is currently probably the best position in the game for, well, the best position on this map for a medium tank that spawns on the east. If you can get here, you can just have monster games. It's so dominant. The key thing that you have to do here is worry about being shot at from above. Having Sixth Sense is a massive help here. As soon as I'm spotted, I know it's time to pull back. And all I really have to do is play fairly defensively and just spot for my team. Interestingly, people have gone along the west, which is unusual, which allows me to get some shots into the side of the enemy. And oh my word, look at all the people who've just been spotted at the west. That's quite unusual for a Malinovka encounter game. It's almost as if they're trying to play it like it's a regular Malinovka game. Now you're going to see just how devastating the DPM on the tier 10 Russian medium tanks are. This IS-3 is just being chewed up, and even though this gun is firing this quickly, look at the alpha damage on it. 320 alpha damage and more than enough penetration, aka 264, to be able to decimate tanks. We're just chewing up the whole of this tier 8 heavy tank, just like that. And that's where the tier 10 mediums do really excel. If I was in a tier 10 heavy outside of maybe, you know, the FV215B, or even to a lesser extent the T110E5, they've all got pretty poor DPM. And you really need to be in a medium tank to get that kind of DPM out. Since the tier 10 tank destroyers have been, for the majority, nerfed, apart from such tanks like the Object 263, I think that's the tier 10 Soviet tank destroyer with the rather interesting gun. I think it's 130mm with 550 alpha damage. But don't quote me on these things. But all of you constantly tell me, when are you going to get that tank? And soon, guys, soon. I'm getting my way through the SU-122-54, and I can't wait to get that Object 263, I think it is. So, interestingly, the enemy have literally allowed me to just have this location. I'm not even spotted right now, and I'm just shooting down on all of the enemies that are spotted on the west. I'm keeping an eye out on the hill, and no, I'm not spotted. There was an IS right there, and I didn't even get seen. Dat Bush camo rating. And the camo rating on the Object 140 is also excellent. It's one of the tanks that I do sort of recommend that you get a camo crew on. So we're just going to go ham here on this IS-8, see what it's able to do to us. Using the great traverse speed to be able to flank around him, and because he missed his shot, I know I will be able to reload before he does. I'm not even going to stop for him. So now we're making our way down west. We're going to go and try and hunt these other tier 8 heavy tanks. We're going to fire on the move, usually quite accurate. Maybe I didn't aim that one perfectly. Oh, that one was a bit of a waff. You could argue that I should have stopped here. Bit of an interesting choice for me to just hold him in position. I don't think that was the right move. I should have probably just guaranteed the damage on him. But I'm more interested in outmaneuvering him and just looking after myself right now. And because of the low-profile nature of the Object 140, he's finding it very hard to hit me. So I'm on a bit of a hero run here now. We're going to go one way, juke back. Going to do a snake movements and look at him wiggling his turret. That poor guy wiggling his turret left, right. He does not know where he's aiming right now. And he's just completely out of position. I get shot by my own team. Thanks, team. And this SD1 is just in full panic mode. He doesn't know what's going on. We're able to feast upon his tank. And right now, at this moment, I was thinking, okay, am I really on nearly 7,000 damage? And nearly full health with a third of the enemy team remaining. This was just such a free-flowing blitz of a game. It's absolutely... Oh, it's such a good feeling when you get these kind of games in your tier 10 medium tanks. And when you know that you've got more damage to be done, when you have an IS-3 in front of you and you're in an Object 140, there's very little that he can do. Just your DPM outmatches him by nearly a third, I should think. No, probably near a half. I think you've got about 50% more DPM. And usually I don't fire this many shots. And there's a whole another IS-3 killed in probably about 20 or 30 seconds. I didn't look exactly. That's just the kind of DPM that you can put out in your tier 10 medium tanks. So wow, I'm going to speed up the replay a bit here. I'm going to see if we can get into position for the final couple of shots, so to say. I've run out of APCR rounds, and now we're firing our premium heat rounds. Seeing if we can get some more damage done. I'm looking for the Jägeru. We want that Jägeru. Oh no, it bounces and he one-shots the... What tank is that? An IS-3? Yeah. That was all she wrote for the enemy team. The Object 140. Absolutely, totally balanced. Completely balanced in this kind of a matchup. I absolutely love this tank. It's got an extra degree of gun depression compared to the T-62A. The only real downside that this tank has is the turret armor is weaker than the T-62A. But as we can see in this game, our turret armor still held up just fine. You could argue that I was getting shot at by tanks with maybe 200, 225 millimeters of penetration. The only thing that actually ended up doing damage to me was my own team. So let's just take a quick look at the post-game stats. So this was the most experience I've ever got in a tier 10 tank. I got 4,784 experience for our double. I've nearly got that much before in an M48 pattern, but this pipped it by just a little bit. So we got a Top Gun and a Sniper Medal. This replay is from 8.10, an archaic Sniper Medal there for you. And we managed to destroy 6 and damage 11. Now 8,400 damage would be special in any tier 10 tank. However, we were also able to get 4,300 spotting damage. And that's why we got nearly 1,600 base experience in a tier 10 tank. In fact, the only damage that we took looks like it was from this VK4502P. Did 454 damage to us. It was simply amazing also to get 142,000 credits in a tier 10 game, and it shows you what aggressive play to some forward positions in your medium tanks can pull off. Now don't get me wrong here, there was nothing super special about this gameplay. I simply used my awareness of the map, knowing the enemy's capabilities, timed aggression knowing when I would be okay, and the fact that the Object 140 is an absolute beast of a tank to clock up a huge game. Now the aggressive position that I took could have backfired and I could have turned almost like, you know, a certain middly kind of game into a very quick demise. Let's say for example that AMX 5120 was above me on that ridgeline, and he just decided that he wanted to dig me out of the position I was in, which is actually very viable. Digging people out of that position on Malinovka is sometimes a good idea if you think that you can get the better of the engagement. I could have easily been reduced to basically no health, and then one of the other tanks could have YOLO'd down and taken me out as well. And that's because it's kind of a high risk, high reward kind of gameplay. Sometimes it's quite fun to play like that. A lot of you always ask me, well, how do you have those massive games? And I'm not talking about it from my perspective here, but I've watched a lot of replays from you guys. So this isn't so much for me as it is seeing what people have done when they have really big games. And generally, it's calculated aggression. The only times I've seen people have big games if they don't play aggressively is if, for example, they're in a T-95 or if they're in an E-100, some heavily armored tank, and they just have donkey tank after donkey tank after donkey tank come after them. You know, those kind of replays where somebody's 1 versus 7 and they're in an ST1 and they've got 7 tigers that just decide to come after them one by one and stand in front of them and just shoot at their turret. Now those are examples where effectively you completely outmatch your opponent. And to a degree I outmatched my opponents here. But I've got hull armor that's worse than quite a few tier 7 or tier 8 medium tanks. They could have very easily have dealt with me if we hadn't used the element of surprise to come in behind them and take them out one by one as they thought they were making a rather good push down one of the flanks. And now don't get me wrong, YOLOing in and being hyper aggressive and just blindly going in as if like a berserker into any situation is going to have a very low probability that you're going to be able to come out from it. What I'm talking about is calculated aggression, and if you really want to pick up your mastery badges in your tanks and you want to get those really big games, then adopting this kind of a playstyle might be beneficial for you. I would also say that medium tanks are an amazing way to learn the game. High risk, high reward, try out as many positions as you can. Find out what works, find out why it doesn't work, to develop a playstyle that works for you. Now, if you're more of a passive player, maybe you like to use tank destroyers and use great camo ratings and really strong defensive positions, then I'm not taking anything away from you. What I'm merely suggesting is that by possibly trying out some medium tanks and some light tanks and playing quite aggressively, you might be able to keep just notching up your game just that little bit higher and that little bit higher and that little bit higher. The key stage for me when I learned to play World of Tanks to what I would call sort of where I am now with it was when I got the M48 pattern in patch 7.5 and I played it again and again and again and again. I clocked up probably 400 games in the M48 pattern in one patch. And I probably learnt as much in that one patch, 7.5 to 7.6, as I have probably learnt in the whole of 8.0 all the way up until 9.0, which will be coming out, I don't know when, in the next undisclosed amount of time. Once you've reached a certain level where you're comfortable in the game, just play tier 10. Play tier 10, tier 10, tier 10. Because it's playing against better players and putting yourself under more stressful situations which will allow you to become better at the game. And don't be afraid if you're doing worse at first. Maybe you'll find, oh no, my win ratios are maybe 40 to 50% in my tier 10 tank. Or maybe you're concerned about your WN7 or your WN8 or your efficiency. Maybe it's worse in your tier 10 tanks. Don't then let that discourage you from playing them more. Because really, they're your tool to take your game to the next level. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider rating it down below and let me know in the comments what you think about my ideas about tier 10 and being probably the best tier to learn once you've reached that kind of midpoint of your game. Did you personally find that it's when you reached tier 10 that you started to really accelerate your learning? Or maybe you felt that you were learning less and then you dropped back down maybe to like tier 7 or tier 5 kind of region. Let me know what you think. So thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.